At Sunday dinner, my sister rolled her eyes and said, "It's cute you still show up like you matter." My dad chuckled. My mom just kept eating. I took a bite and said nothing. 3 days later, I sold the vacation home and canceled all their streaming accounts. That night, my brother texted, "Why is everything disconnected?" The family group chat lit up, and then Dad's lawyer called. It was a terrible Sunday family brunch, and honestly, it would have been better if I hadn't come. I knew at the moment I stepped inside and heard no one greet me. The table was already set. Eggs, sausage over toasted bagels, but everyone was in their own little bubble. My mom was at the sink rinsing dishes she hadn't even used yet. My dad was in his usual spot by the TV, even though the volume was turned down. Jake gave me a small nod from the far end of the table, and Lindsay. Lindsay was already sipping a mimosa like she was at some rooftop brunch in Manhattan, instead of our parents' tacky beige dining room in Ohio. I didn't expect a parade, but it was weird how no one said anything. I pulled out a chair and sat down like I was just some neighbor who showed up by mistake. There were a few minutes of awkward silence, filled only by clinking silverware and Lindsay tapping away on her phone. Then, right as I started buttering my bagel, she looked up and said it. "It's cute. You still show up like you matter." No one gasped. No one told her to knock it off. My dad chuckled. My mom just kept chewing. And I didn't even blink. I didn't say anything. I just sat there chewing that dry, stale bagel like it was the only thing tethering me to the floor. Even Jake didn't look up. But something cracked inside me. Not a scream, not even a spark. Just a quiet, clean break. I finished eating, said I had to run some errands, and left. The next day, I pulled out my laptop and logged into every streaming service they used, all of which were under my name, because back when they couldn't figure out how to set up subscriptions, I'd done it for them. I paid for it all out of habit. No one ever offered to pitch in or take over. I canceled everything. Hulu, Netflix, HBO, Spotify, even the stupid Hallmark movie subscription my mom had begged me to get last December. 3 days later, around 10 p.m., I got a message from Jake. Why is everything disconnected? The family group chat blew up after that. Lindsay wrote something about the Wi-Fi being out. Mom asked if the TV was broken. Dad sent a thumbs up for some reason. No one asked me directly. No one thought to. I just watched the chaos unfold like I was sitting in the rafters of a burning building. That same night, I did the other thing. I went into my files and opened the folder labeled TC Property. TC as in Traverse City, the vacation house, or as they like to call it, the family getaway. That place had been in my name for 4 years, transferred by my dad when he was trying to protect it from a potential lien. He told me it was just on paper, that I'd transfer it back when things calmed down. They never calmed down. He never brought it up again, and I never offered. So I listed it. I didn't even go out there. Just sent the agent the photos I'd taken last summer. Told her to price it to move. And by the time Friday rolled around, we had 2 full offers, 1 cash. I accepted, sent in the closing documents. Friday evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. It was my dad's lawyer. The call came just as I was finishing dinner. Spaghetti from a jar, eaten cold over the sink. I wasn't in the mood for anything, and the unknown number flashing across my screen didn't help, but I answered anyway. The man introduced himself as Ronald Berenger, said he was calling on behalf of my father. He didn't ask how I was, just went straight into it. My father had recently become aware that the Traverse City property had been listed, and he was understandably distressed. He wanted to know if this was a mistake or if I had, in Ron's words, acted unilaterally. I didn't respond right away. I just let him talk. Ron said that my father believed the property was transferred temporarily, that there had been a mutual understanding it would return to him once his financial situation stabilized. He mentioned possible legal complications and serious consequences if the sale continued. I told him to check the county records. Silence, then a nervous chuckle. He asked if I had the transfer documents. I said I did. He asked if I would send them over. I told him he'd get them the same way he got everything else, through the proper legal channels. I hung up. The next day I got an email from someone at Ron's firm. This one was more aggressive. They were formally requesting a cease in all sale-related activity, pending a review of ownership. I forwarded it to the title company, along with scanned copies of the deed transfer and the signed notary record from 4 years ago. I didn't bother responding to the lawyer. On Wednesday, the sale closed. The buyer was from Chicago, cash offer, no inspection. I watched 6 figures drop into my account like I just won a bet no one thought I had the guts to place. By Thursday night, my phone lit up again. Dad. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. He didn't start with hello, didn't even try to ease into it. He just went off, yelling about betrayal, about family, about how I'd taken advantage of him. He said I'd stolen from my own blood and demanded I return the money, or else he'd sue me and make sure I was wiped out. I let him finish. Then I said calmly that I'd kept every receipt, every email, every legal document, that I hadn't touched the house in 4 years, and no one had ever asked for it back, that if he wanted to take me to court, I'd be ready, and I wouldn't be paying for his lawyer this time. He hung up. That weekend, I found my car egged. Not just the windshield, the roof, the doors, the grill, yolks dripping into the vents. It stank for days. I knew it was them. Probably Lindsay. This was her level of maturity. If she couldn't win, she'd throw a tantrum. I got it cleaned and moved on. Monday morning, my mailbox was jammed with shredded paper. A mess of coupons, junk ads, random scraps. It was stuffed so tight I had to dig it out by hand. No note, no signature, just chaos. Again, I didn't say anything. That Friday, I came out to find my back tire slashed. Not punctured, slashed. Clean, cut right down the sidewall. That one cost me $170. Next week, it was the front tire. Week after that, it was the other side, always one at a time. Always just enough to make sure I couldn't drive without fixing it, but never enough to justify insurance. I didn't call the police. I didn't confront anyone. I just replaced the tires and kept every receipt in a folder labeled petty. But I wasn't done. Because 2 years ago, Lindsay couldn't qualify for a car loan. Bad credit, too many late payments, and a repo in college didn't help. She begged me to co-sign, said it was just to get her approved. She'd make every payment. I'd never have to worry. She missed the first payment. I didn't even tell her. I just paid it. And then the next, and the next. I'd been paying her car loan for 24 months. Quietly. Out of guilt or habit or stupidity. I don't know. But not anymore. That Friday, I logged in and canceled the auto pay. No warning, no message, just silence. I closed my laptop and waited for the fire. It took 3 days. 3 days after I canceled the auto pay on Lindsay's car loan, my phone blew up. Monday morning, I had 9 missed calls, 7 voicemails, and 13 text messages, all from Lindsay. She never calls. She texts when she wants something, sends voice notes when she's ranting, and passive-aggressive gifts when she's trying to make a point. But this time, she called, repeatedly. I didn't answer. The text started short. Hey, did the loan auto pay get stuck? Then came the real ones. My car payment just bounced and I got a late notice. WTF is going on? I swear if you're pulling some kind of power move, Lisa, this is actually serious. I drive to work. Then silence. About 2 hours of it. At 11:32 a.m., the family group chat lit up. Lindsay. Someone's playing games with my account. My car loan didn't go through and I'm past due now. Who knows anything? Jake. Isn't it your loan? Dad. Fix it. Mom. Can someone please explain why there's so much drama lately? We are not this kind of family. I didn't reply. I just watched them talk around me like I was a third party, a hired hand who'd suddenly stopped showing up to do a job they never paid for. At 3:10 p.m., Lindsay dropped a screenshot into the chat, her online portal. Giant red warning across the top. Payment failed. Account overdue. Jake reacted with a thumbs up emoji, probably by accident. I kept reading. She'd written a whole paragraph about how she was trying to rebuild her credit and how someone, meaning me, had decided to sabotage that effort out of spite. She said she'd never begged for help and that she wasn't even sure why Lisa was involved to begin with. Right. I exited the chat and deleted the thread. I was done reading fiction. 2 nights later, I heard from Jake again. Direct message. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. He'd been living in the middle of it. He just wrote, "They're seriously losing it. I think Dad broke the hallway door. Lindsay's calling everyone she knows. Mom hasn't talked to anyone since yesterday morning. I asked him how he was. He said, "I need to get out of here." I told him I'd be there the next day. We didn't go back to the house after I picked him up. Just fast food and a long drive to a side of the city none of us ever had reason to visit. I'd been checking listings for weeks. I found a one-bedroom apartment in an older building that was cheap, clean, and not too far from a bus route. Rent was $600 flat. Utilities not included, but manageable. I didn't tell him about it until we pulled into the parking lot. He thought we were just killing time. I handed him the keys and told him to go check it out. He stood there for a long time in the middle of that empty living room, hands in his hoodie, just blinking. Then he asked me, "Why are you doing this?" I told him I wasn't giving him anything. It was a loan. I'd cover the deposit, first month, last month, and the startup costs, but every dollar had to be paid back. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed him to take it seriously. First payment due in 1 month, whatever he could afford. No handouts, just a shot. He nodded and said, "Okay." That night we swung by the house. He ran in, grabbed a backpack and his PS4, and was out in under 10 minutes. No one stopped him. No one asked where he was going. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe they knew. I dropped him off with a few groceries, an old mattress I'd hauled over earlier, and a Wi-Fi router I'd set up that morning under his name. At midnight, he texted me. This is the first time I've heard myself think in months. I didn't reply. I just smiled and closed my phone. Let them panic. Let them scramble. I wasn't done yet. The thing about walking away from your family is people expect a scene, a dramatic fight, screaming, doors slamming, maybe someone crying on the porch. But that's not how it happens. It happens when you stop replying, when you stop fixing everything without being asked, when you stop paying, stop explaining, stop showing up. That's when they notice. It had been a few weeks since I cut the cord with Lindsay's car payments and moved Jake out. No one had called me since, not even Lindsay, which surprised me. She must have been holding out hope I'd cave, send a check, fix her mess like always. But I never did, and she never asked again. I had time now, real time. I wasn't juggling bills I didn't owe or pretending I cared about family brunches where no one made eye contact. I sat down one night, opened my bank statements from the past 2 years, and ran the numbers. I had saved just over $11,000. 11 grand that used to evaporate month after month into Lindsay's Audi. Payments, insurance top-offs, late fees she never told me about. 24 months quietly draining me because she was rebuilding her credit, and I was the reliable one. And then I looked at what I'd spent helping Jake rent for the first 2 months. Deposit, the mattress, a couple of $100 on groceries, a cheap desk from Craigslist, a bus pass, altogether just under $3,000. And Jake was working now, part-time at a hardware store. He texted me his first payment on the dot, $100, with a screenshot of the transfer. I didn't say anything, but I screenshotted it and saved it in the folder with his lease. He was trying. No excuses, no dramatics, just trying. A week later, I bumped into Uncle Brad at Safeway by the eggs. He looked surprised to see me, asked how I was, then leaned in a little too close like he wanted to whisper without actually whispering. "Your mom says you've been going through something." I smiled. "Guess you could say that." He hesitated. "She said you emptied the family accounts, that you sold the house out from under them." I laughed. "The house that was in my name for 4 years. He looked around like someone might be listening. "Between you and me, no one really bought that story. They've been dramatic ever since you were a kid. Everyone knew Lindsay was the favorite." I didn't respond. Then he said, "We're staying out of it. I told your dad that too. But just so you know, not everyone thinks you're the villain here." That hit harder than I thought it would. Later that week, I ran into my cousin Allie downtown. She pulled me aside, bought me a coffee, and said almost the same thing. That my parents were telling people I'd turned my back on the family, that I'd gone cold, but she didn't buy it either. "I don't know what happened," she said, "but they always expected too much from you." Apparently, the extended family was split into 2 camps. Those who politely stayed quiet, and those who had quietly been rooting for me all along. None of them wanted to say it to my parents' faces. They were still family, after all. But more than one relative told me the same thing in different ways. "We get it. We just don't want to be in the middle." Which was fine. I didn't need them to pick sides. I just needed them to stop pretending my parents were saints. And Lindsay, she stopped posting her little cryptic stories online after she got a notice that her car would be repossessed unless she caught up on payments. I didn't say anything. I didn't warn her. I just let the system do what it does. Meanwhile, Jake texted me about a second interview. He was thinking about enrolling in night classes next semester, said he didn't want to stay in retail forever. I told him if he kept paying the rent, I'd help him with tuition when the time came, but same deal, every dollar was a loan. Earned, not gifted. And for the first time, it felt like I wasn't the family ATM. I wasn't the safety net for people who never once returned the favor. They wanted to pretend I didn't matter? Fine. Now they could live with the reality where I actually didn't. A month after I moved Jake into the apartment, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter folded into a torn envelope with a shaky return address. No stamp. It had been hand-delivered. It was from my mom. She didn't write much, just said she hoped I was okay, that she missed how things used to be, that Dad was still very upset and Lindsay was dealing with a lot. Then at the bottom, like an afterthought, she wrote, "Please don't hurt the family anymore." That line stuck with me for hours. Please don't hurt the family anymore. As if I'd taken something from them. As if all I'd done was destruct. No mention of the things I gave. The house. The money. The years of showing up when they barely noticed I existed. No apology. Just guilt and cursive. I burned the letter in a dish on my balcony. 2 days later, Jake called me from a borrowed phone. His had been shut off. His mom had finally cut him out of the family plan. I told him to keep the borrowed one for now. He said thanks, but he'd be fine. He'd get a prepaid and figure it out. Later that same night, I got a notification from my credit monitoring app. There was a new auto loan inquiry under my name. I froze. Opened the alert. It was from a dealership in the next town over. Someone had tried to apply for financing using my social security number. The application didn't go through, probably because of the freeze I'd put on my credit after the house sale. But it had been attempted. I called the dealership the next morning. They said a woman had come in using my info. No ID, just basic details, and claimed she was authorized to apply under my name because I was handling everything remotely. They wouldn't give me a name, but I didn't need one. It was Lindsay. I filed a fraud alert that afternoon, and I didn't say a word to her. Let her wonder why her next attempt got flagged. Let her keep digging the hole. That weekend, I visited Jake, brought over some frozen meals, and a few things for the kitchen. We sat on his ratty couch and watched him try to fix a wobbly chair someone had given him for free. He told me he was working extra hours and planning to start paying me back $150 a month instead of $100. I asked him why the change. He shrugged. Feels right. Then he said, "They're freaking out more than ever now. Dad tried to hack into my email last week. I caught the login attempt." I nodded. Sounds about right. Then he said something I didn't expect. Lindsay said they want to go after you legally again, but not through the courts. I asked what he meant. She didn't say exactly, just that they were going to make you regret turning your back on blood. I didn't respond. Just sat there letting the phrase echo. It wasn't a threat, not really, but it also wasn't nothing. Jake saw my face and said, "I don't think they know what to do without you." I told him that was the problem. They never knew what to do with me either. By the end of the night, I was back in my apartment, sitting on the couch, watching Jake's first rent payment hit my account on time. No drama. And in that moment, I realized something. The more they spun out, the more quiet I became. And the more power I had. They had nothing left to threaten me with. And they hadn't even figured that out yet. 3 months. That's how long it had been since I cut the last thread. In that time, not a single call from Mom, not a voicemail from Dad. Lindsay hadn't tried to reach out either, though I found out through Jake that she tried using my info again to open a store credit card. That one was shut down before it even got reviewed. I reported it like last time and moved on. It wasn't even surprising anymore. Jake was still in that tiny apartment, still working 2 jobs, still sending payments every month, small ones, sometimes just $80, but always on time and always with a note that said, "Still trying." That meant more to me than anything I ever got from the rest of them. He called me one night after work, said he wanted to take a certification course for HVAC night classes, said he'd looked up tuition and it wasn't terrible, but he couldn't cover all of it right away. He didn't ask for help, just said it out loud, like he wanted to see how it felt. I told him what I always told him. If he kept up his payments, stayed consistent, I'd cover it as a loan. Every dollar tracked. Nothing free, he said. That's fair, and changed the subject. That night, I opened the folder on my desktop labeled Family Fallout. I hadn't touched it in weeks, but I wanted to see the numbers again. I went through every payment I'd stopped, every subscription I'd canceled, every loan I'd killed. I tallied what I'd saved, $11,052. Then I calculated what I'd spent on Jake, apartment deposit, rent, furniture, groceries, cell phone when his got cut, $3,135 total. That left me with $7,917 I would have never seen if I'd kept playing the role they cast me in. I hadn't spoken to my parents. They hadn't tried. Jake told me things at the house had gotten strange. Lindsay moved back in temporarily. Dad started locking his office door. Mom took down all the family photos that included me. Like erasing me might reverse the damage. They told the story to whoever would listen, that I'd stolen from them, turned my back on family, betrayed them for money. But they always left out the details. The years I paid for everything without asking for credit. The vacation home they signed over to me because they didn't want to deal with taxes. The fact that they laughed while my sister humiliated me at brunch. People noticed those omissions. I saw Uncle Brad again at a gas station. He nodded at me like he was trying not to cause a scene and said, "Heard they're still mad. Heard you're still winning." I didn't say anything, just smiled and finished filling my tank. He said, "Most of us think you did the right thing. We just didn't know how to say it without blowing everything up." Then he added, "It's probably a relief to not be needed anymore." And it was. That was exactly it. I wasn't needed. Not anymore. I was free. And they were still stuck in a house full of each other. 3 months later, everything had changed. Not for them, but for me. They still lived together in that same worn-down house. Lindsay had moved back in full-time. She sold the Audi after missing 2 more payments and getting another repossession notice. Ended up with a 10-year-old Honda she paid for in cash, probably from whatever she had left or begged off someone else. Jake said she still walked around like she ran the place, barking orders, blaming other people for how unfair life had been to her lately. Dad rarely came upstairs anymore, spent most of his days in the basement, glued to his recliner with a remote in one hand and a beer in the other. Jake stopped going down there entirely, said it was like walking into a museum of disappointment. Full of silence, low muttering, and resentment he didn't even try to hide anymore. Mom had started rearranging the house again, moving furniture around, relabeling things in the kitchen, organizing drawers no one used. That was always her move when things spiraled. Pretend to be in control of the small stuff while the big stuff fell apart quietly in the background. They never reached out, not once. No apology, no message, not even an insult in the group chat. It was like they had finally accepted I wasn't coming back. Jake was the only one still tethered, and even that was loose. He visited once every few weeks, usually when Mom texted him about something important, which was always something like an old box of clothes or a random bill she couldn't figure out. He never stayed long. Jake was doing better than I expected, still working both jobs, still paying me back every month, even upped it to $200 recently. He started bringing groceries to his apartment and cooking instead of eating out. He even sent me a photo of the HVAC course certificate catalog, circled the one he was aiming for. He was becoming his own person, slowly, stubbornly, but definitely. And me? I was free. No more last-minute payments, no middle-of-the-night phone calls, no Sunday guilt, no pretending to care about people who never once cared if I was okay. My phone only rang when someone I chose to talk to needed me. My bank account stayed full. My apartment was quiet. My life was mine. I hadn't forgiven them. I hadn't forgotten what they did. But I no longer needed them to understand it. I didn't need closure. I had distance. I had proof. I had peace.